In a world obsessed with the glitter of gold and the perceived power of currency, what if the true bedrock of ancient economies lay in something far more primal, more enigmatic? What if the very fabric of early human exchange, woven through millennia, transcended mere transactional convenience, revealing a forbidden economic system we are only now beginning to unearth? Welcome to Echoes of Time, your portal to the forgotten pages of history, where we reveal the secrets that lie under the dust of centuries. Tonight, we journey beyond the familiar narratives of coinage and delve into a realm intensely debated, often misunderstood: the ancient practice of barter. Was it merely a rudimentary precursor to monetary systems, or a sophisticated, self-sustaining mechanism with its own hidden rules and profound implications for societal structure, challenging our deepest assumptions about progress and civilization itself? For centuries, historians and economists have meticulously painted a picture of early trade as a simple, direct exchange of goods and services. This conventional wisdom depicts a system often riddled with profound inefficiencies and severe limitations, a clumsy, almost desperate attempt by humanity to navigate the complexities of resource allocation before the advent of universal currency. We are taught to envision early societies across the Fertile Crescent, where the dawn of agriculture first bloomed, or within the bustling, vibrant markets of Mesoamerica, as communities constantly yearning for a more universal medium of exchange. The narrative suggests that the notorious double coincidence of wants, the fundamental obstacle requiring two parties to each possess exactly what the other desired, was the insurmountable barrier, the perpetual bottleneck that stifled economic growth and innovation. In this widely accepted account, the rise of commodity money, be it the precious grains of salt, the intricate patterns of shells, or the living, breathing wealth represented by cattle, emerges as humanity's clumsy yet ultimately necessary attempts to overcome these inherent inefficiencies. They were seen as tentative steps on an inevitable march towards the convenience and abstraction of coinage, symbols of a slow, arduous progression from the primitive to the sophisticated. Yet, as we delve deeper into the archaeological record and scour overlooked ethnographic accounts, a tantalizing whisper emerges from the past, hinting at something far more complex, more nuanced than this simplistic linear progression. The evidence suggests that the ancient world's economic systems were not always striving for the universal medium we take for granted today. Instead, there are profound indications of a different logic, a different set of priorities that shaped human interaction. This alternative view posits a system where social obligations, the intricate tapestry of ritual exchanges, and deeply embedded networks of trust played a far more significant role than mere transactional convenience. It implies that these were not simply obstacles to be overcome, but perhaps the very bedrock upon which economic life was built, profoundly integrated into the social and spiritual fabric of communities. The very definition of value in these societies might have extended far beyond material utility, encompassing social standing, ancestral ties, and communal solidarity. This deepening mystery compels us to ask, what if ancient barter was not a primitive stage at all, but a highly evolved system, deeply integrated with the very architecture of social hierarchies and the nuanced dynamics of gift economies? Some scholars now propose that such systems functioned not merely adequately, but effectively within specific cultural contexts. They suggest that the exchange of goods was often inseparable from the exchange of social standing, of alliances, of ritual recognition. In this paradigm, a seemingly simple exchange of, say, a tool for a bushel of grain might have been laden with layers of meaning: an affirmation of an alliance, the payment of a social debt, a ritual offering, or a reinforcement of communal bonds. The economic transaction, as we understand it, would have been inextricably woven into the broader web of social life, blurring the lines between commerce and community.
It was a system where reputation, kinship, and reciprocal obligations were the true currencies, more valuable and durable than any transient commodity. The concept of gift economies becomes central to this radical reevaluation. Here, the act of giving and receiving is not a zero-sum game of profit and loss, but a continuous cycle of reciprocity that generates and sustains social cohesion. Gifts, far from being altruistic or one-off offerings, often carried with them implicit or explicit expectations of a return, not necessarily immediate or of identical value, but certainly within a reasonable time frame and appropriate form. This created a durable social ledger, a living memory of who owed whom, not in a punitive debt collection sense, but in a way that bound individuals and families into a collective future. Such a system, by its very nature, fostered trust and interdependence, critical elements for survival in worlds without formal legal systems or centralized enforcement mechanisms. This was not the simple exchange of two unrelated individuals with a double coincidence of wants. It was often a deeply personal, relational exchange embedded within existing or newly forged social structures. Yet, other scholars present a counter-narrative, acknowledging that while deeply social, ancient barter could indeed be cumbersome. They argue that its practical limitations, the difficulties of transport, storage, valuation, and the ever-present challenge of the double coincidence of wants, did in fact drive innovation towards more liquid, universal monetary solutions. However, their perspective introduces another layer to the enigma. They acknowledge pockets where barter's forbidden nature stemmed not primarily from its inefficiency, but from its fundamental challenge to centralized control. A system based on intricate networks of personal trust, reciprocal obligations, and fluid social currencies inherently resisted the imposition of external authority. When value is determined by social context and relationship rather than a quantifiable, standardized unit, it becomes exceedingly difficult for a burgeoning state or powerful elite to tax, regulate, or control the flow of wealth. This untamed, decentralized economic landscape would have been an anathema to any aspiring power seeking to consolidate its authority and extract resources from its populace. Thus, barter, in this view, was forbidden because it represented a form of economic freedom that undermined the very foundations of state power, remaining outside the grasp of kings and empires. Its primitive label might have been a convenient narrative, retrospectively imposed by those who benefited from the rise of standardized currency and the control it afforded. A still more radical perspective suggests that the very concept of barter as we understand it today, an equivalency-based, impersonal exchange of goods or services, is itself a modern imposition on ancient practices. This view contends that our contemporary, market-driven lens distorts our perception of a past where economic transactions were rarely, if ever, purely utilitarian. Instead, ancient exchanges were often governed by reciprocal obligations and status, blurring the lines between what we categorize as an economic transaction and what was, in fact, a social ritual. Think of elaborate potlatches among indigenous communities, where wealth was publicly given away, not for immediate material gain, but to establish and reaffirm social prestige and authority. Or the intricate cooler ring exchanges in Melanesia, where specific ceremonial items circulated through an archipelago, fostering relationships and status rather than purely economic profit. These were not mere bartering events in the modern sense, they were complex performances of social identity, power, and connectivity, with material goods serving as tokens within a grander social drama. To label these simply as barter would be akin to reducing a symphony to a series of individual notes, missing the entire composition. The mystery deepens, compelling us to fundamentally re-examine our narratives of human progress. If ancient exchange systems were not merely about overcoming a double coincidence of wants, but rather about maintaining a double coincidence of relationships, then our understanding of societal evolution must shift dramatically.
Was this a system that fostered profound freedom, allowing communities to self-organize their economies based on trust and mutual obligation outside the purview of centralized authority? Or was it conversely a form of unseen control, where social hierarchies and reciprocal debts, though not enforced by currency, nevertheless exerted immense power over individuals, binding them within an inescapable web of community expectations? The implications of these questions are staggering, forcing us to consider whether our current economic models, driven by impersonal currency and market forces, truly represent an unqualified advancement, or if something profound was lost along the way. Unraveling the true nature of ancient economic systems is not merely an academic exercise. It is an endeavor to discover how our modern understanding might be obscuring a complex, forbidden past, one that holds vital echoes for our present and future. By challenging the comfortable narratives and venturing beyond the glitter of gold, we begin to see a humanity that organized its material world with ingenuity and social complexity that far exceeded our conventional interpretations. We find lost civilizations and unsolved enigmas, not just in monumental ruins, but in the very mechanisms of their daily lives. Perhaps the true economic history of humanity is not a linear march from primitive barter to sophisticated currency, but a cyclical journey where the foundations of trust, reciprocity, and social obligation were once, and perhaps could again be, the most valuable currencies of all. As we journey through the ages, where every discovery is an echo of humanity's great history, we are left to ponder what other forbidden systems, hidden in plain sight, might still await our rediscovery, challenging our every assumption about progress and the very essence of human connection.